you need to know the algorithm, you need to know the key, and then you have your plain text back. If no key is involved, you can think about algorithms without key, then you must keep the algorithm secret, but that's very best. More about it later. So a good algorithm, you must always remember that. I said it, must rely only on the key to protect information, not on the algorithm. Nowadays, Caesar had only 25 keys. Nowadays, with algorithm with many keys, and we say that in the amount of bits. For example, if you hear about 40 bits, it means you have 2 till the 40th power amount of possibilities. You can see how many possibilities you have. Caesar had many generals, so he needed to exchange his keys with all his generals, and he had to maintain all the keys with his generals. And that's quite difficult, because you can see here how many keys you need. If you have 10 people, you need 10 times 9, 90. You need 45 keys. You need 45 keys to maintain, and it grows exponential with the amount of people you have. So the disadvantage is poor key management. So the disadvantage is poor key management. But the advantage is that it is easy. It is an easy algorithm. It's fast, and it provides confidentiality. So you can keep something confidential. What it doesn't provide is integrity, authenticity, because you don't know from who the message is coming from, and also no non-repudiation. So non-repudiation is that you can deny that you received or that you sent something. The key length involved in symmetric algorithms. So after this session, you will never mix up key length anymore. When people are talking about asymmetric algorithms, they're talking about 64-bit or 40-bit or 56-bit. No, that's the key length for symmetric algorithms. And we are talking about 40 bits. It's quite low nowadays. 80 bits, it's a little bit better. You see how many keys you can make of an 80-bit key. But the problem is that if you choose your key size too low, that you can brute force a message. So you can see 80 bits is not really good. So nowadays you can start with 112 bits, triple dash for example. We have 2 kinds of ciphers. We have string ciphers and we have block ciphers. I will keep it very short, this part. String ciphers encrypts a data string per bit, but the only thing you should remember is that it's very easy to make implementation mistakes with this algorithm. An example is RC4. And we have seen it a lot. As you can see in Lotus Notes, in Adobe, in PPTP. And if you can remember, there were many problems with the algorithm, with encryption and decryption in these protocols. So the basic recommendation is to avoid RC4. The other, block ciphers, and it encrypts data per block. One of the most important algorithms in the past was this. It was the American data encryption standard, but the key length is 56 bits. So yeah, it is too short for this time. Our computer power is too strong, so we can brute force 56 bits encrypted messages. If you have enough money, you can do it in a couple of seconds. the answer is triple dash. Triple dash, it doesn't mean that it is 168 bits encryption. It is 112 bits. Another algorithm is RC2. It's used a lot. Class 128. You see some properties of the algorithms, but I will skip it because it is time short. Blobfish, idea, there are many algorithms. Ghost was the Russian answer to that. And important for the future, it's advanced encryption standards, so it's a successor of DES. And the protocol chosen, I think, half a year ago, is Rijndael. And you can choose between key length of 128, 196, 256 bits. So 256 bits for symmetric encryption, it's quite a lot. So for next, at least for next 20, 30 years. Okay, let's say 15 years ago. So that's the first way of encryption. So it can provide this confidentiality. The second encryption method is hashing. A hash provides a unique digital fingerprint of a block of data. And the result of the hash is fixed length, so it's always the same amount of bits. And if it's a one-way function, so if you have a block of data, you calculate the hash, you can never calculate the data back from the hash. And if you change a single bit in a message, the hash will change dramatically. And I'll show this. First an example. You have a document, block of data, you take a hash algorithm, then you have a document, and you have the hash. And what you can do, if you receive the document and the hash, you can create, you can calculate the hash yourself, and you can compare the hash you calculate and the sender sends you. If the hash is the same, then you are sure that the data hasn't changed in transit. So it provides data integrity hashing. There are two algorithms, MD5, 128-bit output, and SHA-1. In general, you can say you can use MD5, except when non-repudiation is important, then you should use SHA-1. So you see an example of a block of data. You transfer $100 from my account to Mr. Smith's account. You see the results. If you add a single zero, then the output is completely different. That is very important. Otherwise, you could reverse engineer the content of data if you have multiple messages which are almost the same. So what you can do, if you have a document and you calculate the hash, you send it to some document to somebody else, including the hash. If there's a man in the middle, the person could change the document and could recalculate the hash and change the hash, and then send it to its final destination. So you can solve it if you use symmetric key encryption. And if you both know the same key, you can encrypt the hash using a symmetric key. And we call that message authentication code. It is used in many protocols, for example in SSL. More about it later. So here we see the algorithms. So if non-repudiation is important, SHA-1, otherwise you can choose MD5 is a little bit faster. So if bulk hashing is important, choose MD5. Security more important, choose SHA-1. So the last way of encryption we need for our PKI, it is public key encryption or asymmetric encryption. So Friday, Saturday, we've had many sessions who explained this theory in 5 seconds, 10 seconds. So maybe you know all about it, but I can imagine that it's always difficult to realize what happens exactly. So that's why I try to explain it in detail right now. With public key encryption or one key you share, you have two keys. And you create a key pair at the same moment. And the key pair is based on difficult mathematical problems, for example, primes or elliptic curves. And the key sizes we use nowadays is between 512 and 4000. Of course, you can use smaller key sizes or bigger key sizes, but that has some problems. The biggest problem is that asymmetric encryption is 1,000 times slower than secret key encryption. More about it later, how we can solve this problem. The algorithms, digitalsignatures, RSA, DSA, but there are more. But these are the most important algorithms. The key management is very good because first of all, you have 10 people, then I as an individual have 11 keys. 100 people, I have 101 keys. So it's not exponential. The other part, what is very good, is you don't have to share a key. Sharing a key is the problem that I'm here, Huub is in Amsterdam. How can we share a key? If I call him, somebody can eavesdrop. If I send an email, somebody can cache that email. With asymmetric encryption, you don't have that problem. You create a key pair. One key is private, and you keep it for yourself, and the other key is public, and you can do with it whatever you want. So here the theory, how you can do it. Again, the picture, and this famous Alice and Bob story, it's always Alice and Bob, I don't know why. We have Alice. Alice has an original plain text. In history, Alice has created a key pair. And Bob has also created a key pair. So first, if Alice wants to send Bob an encrypted message, Alice asks Bob, can you please provide me your public key? Or Alice goes to a directory and says, please give me Bob's public key. Alice encrypts a message with Bob's public key. If you encrypt something with one key, then you can only decrypt it with the other key, and the way around. So you have a key pair. One key is private, the other is public. If you encrypt something with this key, you can only decrypt it with the other key, and the way around. So if you send Bob a message and you encrypt it with his public key, then he can only decrypt it with his private key. Summation. Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. So you take an asymmetric algorithm, for example RSA, you take Bob's public key, you encrypt the message, and you have the ciphertext. Bob receives a message, takes the public key, his private key, decrypts the message, and you have the original plain text back. That's easy. So again, the algorithms, RSA, digitalsignatures. If you want to know more about this, I can explain it after 11 o'clock. Okay, some more. So key length, we start with 512. It's marginal security, so only use it, for example, on smart cards when memory is too small. 1024 is recommended. For longer term security, use at least 2048. About balance, more later. So we've now three different ways of encrypting, and you can also combine them. So if you combine hashing and public key cryptography, then you can provide integrity and authenticity. I will show you. Alice has a plain text, and Alice says, okay, I sent this message to Bob, and I want to be sure that nobody can change the message, and that Bob really knows that it is coming from me. How do you do that? You first take the hash algorithm, and define, for example, you calculate the hash. Then Alice takes her private key and encrypts that hash with her private key. If she encrypts the hash with her private key, the whole world can decrypt it with her public key. And we call this process signing. So she signs the hash. If she encrypts something with her private key, then we call it signing. So she signs the hash with her private key. So we have the message. Then in the middle, we have the encrypted hash, the signed hash, and then we have her public key, and she sends this message to Bob. Then we have Bob. Bob receives a message. Bob takes Alice's public key and decrypts the hash. On the left, we see the hash. Then he takes the documents and we calculate also the hash of the documents. We call that fresh hash. And now he has two hashes. The fresh hash, the hash he calculated of the documents, and the hash Alice has sent him. If you compare the two hashes on the other side, then you are sure that nobody changed the message in transit. And you are sure that the message came from Alice, because Alice is the only one that has her private key. If you can decrypt it with the public key, you are sure that Alice must have signed that message, and nobody else. We send the public key the message, and that's gives us a problem. The solution is later. So I try to build it, otherwise it's complicated. We do it all in one. Oh, the solution. Here's the solution. So he says, the problem is, if you send your public key with the message, and there's a min in the middle, you can also replace the public key with your own public key. And you can take the documents, and you can calculate your own hash, and you can sign it with your private key. And in the middle is best. So the solution is the so-called X5 Online version 3 certificates. What is it? Basically, it's a block of data containing several fields, and it's a connection between somebody's public key and the identity. So we have Alice. We know her name, maybe we know her company. We know her public key, and we put it in a block of data. And this block of data is digitally signed by a trusted third party or a certification authority. So somebody else signs this block of data. So if you receive the certificates, and you see in the certificates, you see Alice's public key. You see in the data of the certificates that is Alice, and you can check the signature of the certificates using the public key of this certification authority. I will accent this for you later, because if you go higher, we have a problem in the root. So it's a block of data, information, including the public key, and at the end, you have a digital signature of the trusted third party. So that's a party who checked Alice's credentials and checks that Alice is really Alice. And that the public key is really Alice's public key. That's important. So what is a trusted third party, or in other words is certification authority, or in other words is certification service provider? What can it? It's a point of trust. For example, a passport. If I go to the States, Mr. Bush, trust me, think, oh, you're Mr. Vandenham. And why? Because I have a passport. And why do they trust it? They trust it because of the physical elements of the passport. There is certain security in the passport. And on the other hand, there are policies. government has policies, and they don't provide passports to everybody. No, you should come to the community house, and you should show up in person, and you need to prove in a certain way that you are Mr. Vandenham, and then you look at your passport. And because the US government knows that we are very careful about providing passports to citizens, that's why they trust the passport, and that's why they trust that I'm a Vandenham. And that's the same with certification of properties. So if you trust a third party, you can check the signature of a certificate, but somewhere it is all coming together. You can have multiple trusted third parties, multiple CAs, and the certificate by these CAs can be signed by another CA. And somewhere you have a root. And how are you sure that's the public key of a root CA is really the public key of the root CA. And then you must trust our providers of our software, Mr. Netscape, Mr. nowadays, Boulder. We must accept because they put the certificates of the root CAs in their software. And it's also points where you can try to hack the root store, where you can try to, okay. I have an example. We have a problem because asymmetric encryption is very slow. So if you have a message, if you have a big message, 10 megabytes, and you encrypt it with the recipient's public key, it can take hours. Very long. So we have a solution for this, and I have an example. It's the secure MIME example. S-MIME, that's an extension on MIME, and with S-MIME you can send encrypted and signed messages over the internet. With an original email, you take a hash algorithm, for example, SHA-1, and you calculate the hash. You take your private key, you take a asymmetric algorithm, for example, DSA, digital signature algorithm, and you sign the hash. Now we have a signed document. So that's a document with a seal. What we do now, let's assume that the document is 10 megabytes, it's too big. You know what we do? We encrypt it with a symmetric algorithm. So we create a random key. And for example, we use DES, and we encrypt that whole document, and then we have the encrypted signed document. But then we have a problem, because then we have a document, and we have a session key. So that's a key. It's only used this time for this email message. And how does the recipient know the session key? You can call him, you can send it by email, it's a problem. So for this problem, we use asymmetric encryption. So what we do is we take public key and we encrypt only the session key, which is 128 bits, for example, very small, with this public key. So that can be done in half a second. And all together, we put it in a message, we send it over the internet to Bob. Bob receives it. The first thing Bob does is taking its private key, he decrypts the session key. With the session key, he can decrypt the documents using this. Then he has a signed document. Then he takes Alice's public key, uses the same algorithm, DSA, and decrypts the hash. Then he calculates his own hash, and then he compares the two. He gets the same, and he is sure that it came from Alice, and that nobody changed the message. Again or not? It's okay? Okay. This is one example. Okay, because of the questions we use. As a second example, SSL, secure socket layer, also making use of this. With the client, with the server. The client wants to set up a secure session to the server and sends a packet, listen, this is my SSL version, this is the cipher I support, this is the time, an ID, and sends it to the server. The server sends back some server info and its certificate with some signed data. So Alice sends the server some data, the client, let's say the client sends the server some data, and the server signs this data and sends it back. So if the client can decrypt this data, and if the data is the same, and the client also receives the server's certificate, so the client can do a certificate check, if the certificate is really signed by a third party. If that's the case, then the client sends a pre-master secret to the server. Because the client knows the server's public key, the client can generate a pre-master secret, so that's a session key basically, it's a pre-session key for this session only. The client can decrypt it and encrypt it with the public server public key. The server is the only one that can decrypt it. We also have the case that we also have client certificates, but let's assume now only the server certificate. So if you also have client certificates and the server can be master secrets. And now both sides have the master secret, and both sides can now calculate the session key. So for the session we use symmetric encryption again, because it is fast. So the client says then to the server, okay, for now encryption, the handshake's over, in an encrypted way, and also back, and then the session can start. What they use, maybe they say it's on the, maybe it's here we can see it. For the encryption of the session, we have application data that is fragmented by the client or by the server. That is compressed, and then we add so-called message authentication header. And that is first, we calculate the hash over the fragment, and then we encrypt that hash using the session key of that session. So only the server knows, only both parties, both involved parties know the session key. So if the client sends data to the server can check if the data hasn't changed in transit. So as the MAC, encrypted, you add something, then you send it to the other party. So it provides us confidentiality. And what else does it provide us? And the question is, what is one thing and does it provide us? We have four things: authentication, confidentiality, integrity, and non-repudiation. And what does not provide us by this protocol? So we have confidentiality, because it's encrypted. We have authentication, because both parties, at least the server authenticates to the client, and you can also do it both ways. So we have that. We have integrity, because you add message authentication header. So the other party can check if nothing changed, but we don't have non-repudiation. Because if I send some data to the server, and I use the session key, I'm not the only one that knows the session key. Also the server knows the session key. So I can always say, I never signed this data, because it's not really signing. There's always somebody else, a server, or a server administrator, that could have known the session key and could have faked traffic. So if you need non-repudiation, you cannot use SSL. You need extra measures. For example, Java signing with some libraries, and you can do that. So very short, server-side certificate provides its confidentiality, but it is vulnerable for minimal attack. I think much in detail for now. Authentication, integrity. say key management, we should store everything somewhere. Certificates, very nice place. That's a directory, for example. But what is more important that is the key. That's the private key. And yeah, certificates again. You can store it everywhere. Flat files, relational database, proprietary database, Windows registry, address books, excitement directories. We call it nowadays outbound directories. Okay. Private key storage. You need something more secure. Maybe I have two examples. For example, smart cards or a USB token. I have it here. So my digital signature is on this USB token. And there is some accreditation for the quality of these tokens. There's one very important. We call it FIPS, one for level 1. There are 4 levels. The highest level, if you have it, then it has some tampering attack features. For example, you cannot open the chip, you cannot play with it, if there are extreme temperatures, something happens. What happens then is that all the information of the private key is serialized, so that it is deleted, so that nobody can access your private key. Also very important is that the key generation is on board, so that the public and private key pair is generated in the chip and will never ever leave this chip. So all the calculations are done in the device. That's really important to have real non-repudiation, to have a real digital signature. Another important thing for the CAs is, for the CA has the data, has the person's credentials, has the public key, and signs it. But before you can sign it, you must be sure that the person is really the person. We call that registration. So the registration process is really important in terms of third party. A couple of months ago, VeriSign has signed an object signing certificate for somebody we don't know who it is. And they said, okay, you're from Microsoft, we sign this certificate, so now this person now can sign software as it is coming from Microsoft. Yeah, they have revoked. You can, there is, that is a little bit more advanced topic, you can revoke certificates. The problem nowadays that there are no really revocation checks in the most common software. For example, in your browser, there's no revocation check. You can check in a database of the third party if the certificates are revoked. But nowadays we don't do it. There are 2 protocols, certificate revocation and there's OCSP. So OCSP is the future, but it is not really implemented in our software. So yeah, that's a little bit the weak points of DPI. We don't have time for questions. Because what can we do with certificates and with trusted parties? That's weak parts.
Good morning, everybody.
No, it's not. Yes, it is. As I told me, I'm a lawyer. What's a lawyer doing at the home? First of all, recently I installed my own ADSL network at home, and I'm trying to configure a firewall. And that already took me a couple of weeks, so I hope I can get some support from you. Secondly, I'm working for a big Dutch law firm at the ICT and intellectual property section. So I have some knowledge about PKI. What I will do, I will start with a short background, because I already have a long background from Ireland, but I need something to start the presentation with. And the background is a nice thing to start with. Then I will tell you something about the Electronic Signature Directive, something more about AC. I think that's particularly interesting for you because that explains something about the relation between the technical part of PKI and the legal part of electronic signatures. And I will end up with some small, short comments about TTP-NL, the Dutch version of AC, you could say. The background? No. I will keep it very short. The problem, you don't know who you're talking to. The solution, perfectly explained by Ilan. That's the, this should be the, Bob, yes, this is Alice, she's a line party. What does it have to do with the legal stuff? As introduced by Arjan, there were all kinds of processes, techniques used to solve the Bob and Alice problem, but lawyers and maybe some other people were wondering what the status of this whole system is. Is it comparable with the traditional signature? Is it stronger than the traditional signature? What does the judge think about it? So that's the first reason why the European Union, European Commission said we need a directive. It's not clear what the status is of an electronic signature. And the second thing, you probably all think this is a firewall, but it's not. It's a legal barrier. Some countries, like Germany, Italy, they come up with their own regulation, and this is not what the European Commission wanted in relation with the free movement of people, services, goods. So they come up with an European directive, the European Directive, the Electronic Signature Directive. It is in December 1999. It was adopted. It was published in January the 19th. And as I said, it aims at the legal recognition of the validity of the e-signatures. So it says in short that electronic signatures are valid. Secondly, it stimulates free movement of goods and services. Mainly by having one regime, one legal regime for all the European countries. It stimulates the safe electronic communication, because when it stimulates using PPI, it has one of the consequences that it stimulates safe electronic communication, and it stimulates the certification service providers services. The main part of the directive talks about guarantees and liability. I'll tell you something more about it later on. And one important thing to remember is that it's technology-independent framework legislation. In other words, it does not say you have to use PKI. It only says you need a reliable system. What does it say about public certification? First of all, it says that the certification services are not subject to prior consent. In other words, member states are not allowed to say you can only offer certification services if you have a license, for example. It's free to offer those kind of services. Nevertheless, voluntary accreditation schemes like AC, TTPNL, and also other European countries like Italy and Germany came up with their own system, are supported. It makes a distinction between the simple certificates, the X509 standards, and advanced qualified certificates. And one of the annexes, I will talk about the annexes later, explains what an advanced qualified certificate is. It also tells us how you get legal, equal electronic signature that's legal, equal with the handwritten signature. In that case, you need a qualified certificate. You need a secure signature creation device, and you need an advanced signature. And if you combine all that together, you get a handwritten signature. I can understand that this goes a little bit fast for some people. At the end, I have some references, because I cannot go into detail since we only have 10 minutes left. So besides the main part of the directive, there are 4 annexes. And those are the interesting part because they make the relation with the technical stuff. The European Directive furthermore has an international dimension. It also tells us, okay, you got VeriSign in the US. They're also offering certification services. are they accepted in the European Union and when are they accepted? And inside the European Union it's clear, we all have the same system, at least the politicians have other ideas about this at the moment, but at the end we hope we all have the same system. And certain countries, for example verisign certificates, will be accepted when there's a legal contract between the European Union and that particular country. In case the certificate service meets the same standards as the European, as the ones in the European Union, and it's also validated by a third party. And the third reason is the third way to get your outside European Union certificates validated in the European Union is to have a European certificate service provider who wants and guarantees that your certificate meets the desired level of trust. The European Directive further tells us something about liability. You can imagine that issuing certificates can be a dangerous and risky service. We recently had the Microsoft story, and where they issued a certificate to a non-identified person, and that can bring and cause a lot of damage, and might lead to liability for the certificate service provider. The European Directive says it's very simple. Liability is just the same as it is in the applicable EU country. But so if you want to know if you're liable in a particular case, you have to find out if you're liable under your own jurisdiction. But besides that, it tells us that if you want to issue qualified certificates that are equal to the handwritten signature, you need to accept liability in at least 3 circumstances. First, you have to make sure that all the information is correct the moment you issue the certificate. Second, you have to guarantee that you issue the certificate to the holder. You don't give it to another person. More or less the Microsoft problem. And third, when you generate both the public and private key, I got 2 minutes. I have 0 minutes, but I can have 2. Okay. So when the certificate service provider generates both the public and private key, they have to make sure that they can apply with each other. That's the final signal. So the directive has some annexes. They go into more detail. If you want to have a signature that complies legally, fully with a handwritten signature, you have to make sure that you comply with all these annexes. I have at the end I have some references where you can find the text. National directive is not directly applicable in all the member states. It has to be implemented by the national government. All the national governments have to do this before the 9th of July. I'm sure they won't make it, because in the Netherlands we just we only have a draft so far, and I think the other European Union countries have the same problem. And what else? It encourages self-regulation. Maybe I'm going to end with this part. I will skip the TTP&L because it's more or less the same as the AC stuff, but then it's just for the Netherlands, and also other European countries have their own national self-regulation. What the European Commission realized is that the European Directive is nice, but it's too legal for most of the people who have to work with it. So what they did, they mandated a special new organization called AC, European Electronic Signature Standardization Initiative. So this is the directive. If you want to implement this, give us some rules for that. We don't say that the only way to implement the European Directive correct is to comply with the new rules, but just to make it more practical for the technical people, for the organizational people. What do we have to implement? Make some concrete rules. And that's what AC did, and in particular SEN and ETSI, two already existing organizations, jointly developed this. You can see all the parts of the annexes from the directive are part of this sheet. The certificate service provider, they make some rules for. And those are not only technical rules like the trustworthy system, that's mainly technical, but the requirements for certificate service providers is also that you have to make sure that all your people are, all your staff is appropriately trained, that you have an insurance, all those kind of more general requirements. They also made a nice document that explains how a qualified certificate should look like. They explained how a creation should be a certificate creation device. You should remember that's one of the obligations to have a qualified electronic signature, that you need a secure signature creation device. What is it? What bit level do you need? It's all in that document. And they also had some policies about how a signature format looks like. I think I will skip this one. This is depending on the level of trust you want, they made different schemes. And this is the TTP&L stuff. This is more or less all the European unions, or most of the European countries, came up with their own regulation. In the Netherlands it was the TTP&L initiative. And at the end, it turned out that it was more or less the same as the Asian stuff. I will, I think this is the most interesting part of my presentation, with a 15 minutes presentation. It's a very nice subject, I believe, but it's also very complicated. So I gave you some references, and I think I will be around for a couple of hours. If someone wants to talk about it or has some nice ideas about it, I would like to hear it. And I hope we can have a informal talk about it later on. Any questions? I think I got 1 minute left for questions.